Welcome back. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo fighting back during a heated hearing over the Helsinki summit. Senate lawmakers demanding to know what was said behind closed doors.
We've heard that some agreements were reached, but as of yet have little idea what those might be. It appears that in a ready, fire, aim fashion, the White House is waking up every morning and making it up as they go.
Has the president told you what he and President Putin discussed in their 2-hour closed-door meeting?
Presidents have a prerogative to choose who's in meetings or not. I'm confident you've had private one-on-one meetings in your life as well.
Did he tell you whether or not what happened in those 2 hours?
Yes, Senator. The predicate of your question implied some notion that there was something improper about having a one-on-one meeting.
So shouldn't some of the president's foreign policy affairs and meetings like this remain private? That's the question. Our panel joins us now to weigh in. Republican strategist Boyd Matheson, Democratic strategist Bassem Al-Hussein, and national security and military analyst Dr. Rebecca Grant. So many great opinions on this morning, guys. Can't wait to get to it. Boyd, we'll start with you. It's a private meeting. It's a 2-hour meeting. This is diplomacy. This is how it works. Should this be private?
Yeah, it definitely needs to be private. The important thing you have to recognize in the world today, that one of the most important leadership qualities, one of the most important national security abilities is to be able to look at allies, look at alliances. Make no mistake, the Russians are foes on many fronts. They are competitors on many fronts, but they're also important strategic alliance in terms of dealing with North Korea. North Korea only gets dealt with if there is an alliance and a honest conversation, not in front of podiums and microphones and banks of lights, where they can talk with China, Russia, and the U.S. And so these private conversations are a critical part of diplomacy. Too often we hyperventilate about what happens at the podiums. These private conversations matter, and they need to stay private so they can actually build that relationship and look at areas where we do need Russia or other countries as critical members of an alliance to move our national security interests forward.
Bassem, over to you. We saw yesterday this was bipartisan concern over what happened in that meeting. Talk about that.
That is exactly right. As we know, Senator Bob Corker, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who is a Republican, called this hearing, and rightly so. While we all recognize that leaders, of course, have a right to speak to each other candidly and in private, we also have to understand that this meeting was extremely controversial, and put it into the context of what has been going on in Russian-U.S. relations, and especially the concerns between the Russian government and the Trump administration. At this point, the Senate has conducted its own investigation into Russian election meddling, and consistent with all of the intelligence agencies, has concluded that number one, Russia did meddle, and number two, that the point of the meddling was to hurt the Hillary Clinton campaign and to help the Trump administration campaign. And that's why this particular meeting between these two foreign leaders is of particular concern.
Dr. Grant, though, it was even acknowledged by Corker, who was really going after Pompeo there, that he did acknowledge that, you guys have been tougher, that all these things have been signed off by the president, these sanctions against Russia. They're not going to give any relief until Crimea is returned to the Ukraine. And even with the natural gas thing we saw yesterday, President Trump's trying to take some of their natural gas business away from Vladimir Putin. So there has been a lot of toughness on Russia.
Yes, and that natural gas news, that's really quite important, because Gazprom dominates there, and this is Trump firing back and saying, move over, Gazprom, and let's get some price relief. So that is very, very significant that there might be more U.S. liquid natural gas going into Europe. Trump deserves the right to have these private meetings, and it's his business style. In business, a private one-on meeting is a mark of high respect, and it's how you get things done. We need to have Washington give a timeout and let Trump have some room to maneuver.
Quick responses from all of you. Boyd, Corker did call this meeting. He is a Republican, but nobody's unfamiliar with the fact that he hates the president.
And that's good. It's fine. That's the Senate's prerogative to do that. That's not a problem. But again, the big key, as Dr. Grant said, this is about how do we build alliances around strategic things for the best interest of the country, and we have to allow that to happen. The Democrats, a little bit of an overreach in terms of saying, hey, we're going to subpoena interpreters. I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set as well. That's a difficult job, one of very high trust, and we shouldn't pull them in.
Bassem, it's hard to kind of diverge from the way the president treated Putin publicly to the way he's treating him with his diplomacy and with his actions. Is that what Democrats are struggling with?
I think the biggest problem that Democrats are concerned about is not that the president is meeting with Mr. Putin in private, but rather that the lack of clarity on the outcomes of that meeting is leaving the United States federal government confused on how to move forward. And Congress plays a very key role, as do other areas of the government as well. So, for example, the general who is in charge of Central Command is on record of saying that he does not know if we are changing course in Syria. And when you look at what the Russians are saying, it seems like President Putin believes that he came to an agreement with President Trump on Syria, and yet our own general of Central Command doesn't know what that is.
Dr. Grant, Mike Pompeo did say that the president told Vladimir Putin he's not going to tolerate any more election meddling. That did come out of that hearing.
Very clear message, as was the message on Crimea. And from a national security perspective, we want Trump and Putin to talk because we don't want Putin and Xi Jinping of China to run off and be best friends.
Absolutely. No, we don't. Those are two big powers. All right. Guys, thank you so much. All three of you. We appreciate it. Jillian, over to you.
Thank you for having me.